compelling stories are not hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Join your host, Dr. Eric Shaw, prosecutor Ryan Frank, writer Adrian Bonenberger, and comedian Ryan Connor as they interview ordinary people about their extraordinary experiences. This is Baggage.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. In this episode, we have Charlie joining us, who has in his experience a few different things, but all aviation related in the military. And also, in the United States, we say flight attendant. I don't know if they call it something different in South America, but you also have the claim to fame, our first international guest.
Well,
so
that's great.
Welcome to the podcast, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie. I am a former Argentine Air Force soldier, aka low-level grunt. I currently work professionally as a flight attendant, and I am building my hours in civilian aviation. Currently, private pilot. I also used to fly gliders, which saved my life.
What do you mean by that?
You'll see later in the podcast.
Foreshadowing.
It's foreshadowing.
You're better at this than we are.
I will say that if knowledge of how to glide is saving your life, that's a bad situation. That's pretty good foreshadowing.
Yeah. Well, it was terrible. It was terrible, and I walked out of it. I almost crashless. I scratched my finger a little bit exiting the plane. That's more foreshadowing. I think we should leave that for a little bit farther because it might get kind of messy.
So let's start with one of the reasons I was excited about this episode is we started this podcast and it's people that have stressful jobs and a lot to deal with. And what we were all interested in is the things you don't really think about, sometimes they might seem kind of mundane, but when it's bad, it can be really bad. When it's stressful, it can be really stressful, such as you're stuck on an aircraft at thousands of feet in the air with people that maybe don't want to be there sometimes and they're frustrated with you. So I'll put the ball in your court. Well, first of all, how long have you been doing the flight attendant stuff?
It's 1 year, 6 months, and 1 year, 7 months, and 6 days.
Okay. And in that time, have you had an occasion to have difficult passengers?
Yeah. One that pops to mind. How comfortable are you guys with putting swear words in this podcast?
Go for it.
As per my airline requirements, when you sit in an emergency row, you have to be willing and able to sit there. You have to be willing and capable of following safety instructions. And generally being disruptive is it's a great way to get you kicked off that seat. Generally, we swap you with somebody who's less of an asshole. Which was the case in this situation. But I had a flight returning from Brazil. Every time it's Brazil, seriously, I don't know what's happening in that country. Even Argentines, when we go or come back from Brazil, it's a problem. But the emergency row in this question was a Brazilian bodybuilder, like seriously, just 250 pounds of meat, an empty seat, and an Argentine asshole. And I had the other flight attendant working that flight finishes giving the safety demo and the emergency row little speech we have, and this guy puts his headphones on as she politely asks him, "Hey, sir, we need you to keep the earphones off for taxi and takeoff in case there's an emergency. We need you to be able to hear our instructions." The guy immediately responds with, "Why don't you shut the fuck up, you cunt?"
Whoa. Oh, have you already started taxiing? Are you off the gate now at this point? You're like
off the gate during pushback.
So you're stuck with him.
Yeah, I'm stuck with him. So I see the little commotion. We were 4 flight attendants in this flight. I'm the next in line. So I see the little commotion and I go like, what the hell is going on? So I tell the purser, "Hey, stop the little safety demo chat. We have a bit of a situation going on." And we go in. The purser is like, "Sir, are you willing and able to comply with flight attendant orders?" The guy's just giving her a defiant look. like not saying yes, not saying no, not saying anything. Just his eyes were saying "fuck you" and everything you stand for. So the purser was like, "Okay, sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to move to the seat behind of you. You, sir, are you comfortable sitting in an emergency row?" He was like 1.90 m. That's like or 6'1". He was so happy to get the extra leg room, so we swapped. But the guy was staring daggers at us the whole flight. I was actually playing, how you call it, bodyguard with the lead purser and the other flight attendant, just looking mean behind them. The flight goes on without a hitch. We land. The purser starts doing a report. The Brazilian bodybuilder actually at one point came up to us and said, "Hey, you can count on me. If the guy gets rowdy, look at me. I will fold him into a pretzel. So don't worry about it. The emergency row is safe with me." So once we deplane and everything, we go past customs. As soon as we exit the terminal, the guy was waiting for the lead purser and just walked up to her and says, like, "Fuck you. This won't be the last time you hear of me." Spits between her legs and fucks off into a taxi.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's one of the situations we had to file a police report about it. And given how Argentine police works, they didn't do a thing. Lazy bastards.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those situations that it wasn't scary per se, but it was super uncomfortable. Everybody around was kind of jittery on the flight because the guy started the flight like that. So off the gate, literally, the flight was tense, and it was like 3 hours of flight, just constantly looking over our shoulder to see what the guy was doing.
Was there any ramifications after that, or did it just kind of go away?
It goes away. We filed actually, I think nothing happened because we filed the report with the guy and everything, and like 4 days later, I have a flight from Buenos Aires to, I think it was Calafate or Bariloche, which are two very popular tourist towns in southern Argentina. The guy boards my plane.
Same guy. And
crazy enough, it's not the first. It was the first time that something like this happened, but it's not the last time. I had a situation not long ago, like after we talked about starting the podcast, where I had a guy pass out on a restaurant, and I tended to him, doing first aid and everything. He was fast asleep, actually snoring, unconscious on the table.
Hold on.
Look, whom among us has not had a long day and gotten dragged out to dinner by their family and just needed to catch a couple Z's? That's guilty as charged.
Well, this guy definitely went to sleep. The funny thing is, he passed out because he hadn't eaten in all day long, and he passed out into his burger, so he didn't quite get to eat it on time.
Wow. So you intervened?
Yeah.
So this is completely unrelated. This is just you at a restaurant.
It's kind of related in the sense that 3 weeks later, I found him on a plane I was flying.
Oh,
wow.
Wow. That's a small world. I mean, you must have said, there's a lot of people traveling through. That's one heck of a coincidence.
Yeah. Keep having weird coincidences. Really
Getting
weird.
back to that jerk on the plane. So he was an Argentinian flying from Brazil, and the Brazilian bodybuilder was willing to step in, which makes me think Americans have to be the worst, right? Americans on a plane are probably got to be some of the worst passengers. Yeah.
You can be honest.
It depends on the type of bad. There are different flavors of terrible passenger.
Okay.
But American passengers had a Karen, like honeycomb hair American.
Yeah.
Just tell me to shut up a baby on the plane, and I
to shut up a baby, go make that baby be quiet.
Yeah, basically. And I told her, "I'm sorry, madam, but babies don't come with an off button." She was not happy.
Along that lines, one of my favorite stories I tell from flying. So for Denver, there's a really bad winds that come through here.
Yeah.
And so landing is always a little bit touch and go. And you can do this thing where the plane just kind of drops and then kind of pops back up, and you're dropping 100 feet and you feel it in your guts. And my daughter was probably about 3 or 4 months old. My wife is recovering from being pregnant just a few months ago. And we're coming back from Florida, and my daughter was perfect the entire flight. Didn't cry, didn't nothing. And we come into Denver and it's doing that sort of turbulence thing. And she starts crying within the last 10 minutes of the flight. At the same time, my wife starts instantly vomiting. That drop thing just got her. It was just like she was fine to just like puking everything up. She's got the bag. I'm holding the baby. And there's this old man in front of us that's doing the kind of like eyeball thing between the seats. And I looked at him and was like, turn around. Don't look at me. I was like, I am dealing with this right now. She has been fine. Turn the fuck around, basically.
That's super unfair though, too, because it's like, look, the crying baby problem, I don't know if you agree with this, Charlie, but I feel like the crying baby problem becomes a problem after like a half an hour, like 20 minutes, a half an hour, especially earlier in the flight. Like when you know that you're in for it. And if the parents, they're flying and they got the crying baby, I do think it's justifiable to feel some sort of like, you brought this baby on the plane and you're messing it up for everybody. But at the end of a flight, especially if the baby's made it to like the last 10 or 15 minutes, like, geez, yeah, of course, the pressure's dropping, all the stuff is going on. Like, don't get mad at the parents then. They're at the finish line. We're all applauding. We just want to get off the plane. Like, I think that he was out of bounds, Eric. I think that was an unjustified look that he gave you.
I agree.
Also, you have a lot of very like problematically curious people. So I don't know, the guy was like looking out of curiosity, or was he just side-eyeing you?
Oh, no. It was the angry, side-eye, judgmental look. It was not happy. And I was not having it at that point because I was stressed out. I don't even like flying in that conditions either. And like my kid's screaming, my wife is vomiting all over. I was stressed out too. So I was just not in a situation to tolerate that at all.
Yeah, you're justified at like he can keep his, like, he should mind his business.
Yeah. It's been 4 hours of this kid being totally quiet and you're going to judge me for the last 10 minutes? Fuck off.
Yeah, honestly, 4 hours of a chill kid. How old was your kid?
About 3 months.
3 months, and she took a 4-hour flight like a champ. Jesus, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got the thing with kids is they can't equalize the pressure in their ears. So that's got to like, usually I assume if I hear a crying kid, their ears hurt because they don't know how to equalize them. So I have sympathy, but that comes with parenthood, you know?
Yeah, also crying actually helps a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it opens up the...
Crying actually helps with the
eustachian tubes.
I was going to say, Eric's going to fill it in. What is it?
Eustachian tubes.
Eustachian tubes. See, I actually fly pretty comfortably. I never have that problem. Same with like going up and down mountains and stuff like that. Adrian, I don't know if you ran into this in the military, but you learn to like flex your jawbone because I deal with so many pressure changes that I can just like move my jaw and it opens that up. So it's pretty rare that I can basically make my ears pop whenever, and that helps a lot. But that's develops over time. Have you ever well, you're always in pressurized cabins, so it's probably not that big a deal. But in the helicopter, it was unpressurized. So we'd hear stories about you carry Flonase with you because if you got stuffed sinuses, you go up at altitude. When you start coming back down, you can't equalize your ears. There's been stories of crew chiefs and pilots that have had to circle for a while. They can't equalize. They're running out of fuel. They have to land and their eardrums rupture. Yeah, that's right. For their eardrums rupture. And that's got to be so painful.
Flonase takes time to work. Sure, it's not Afrin?
Afrin. Yes, I'm in Afrin. Yeah. I never used it. I never had a problem with that, but I've heard stories of just like, yep, you just got to like grit your teeth and here we go. I'm going to rupture my eardrums right now so we can land this plane. Yeah, no thanks. So you probably didn't have to deal with that stuff, but have you ever had to deal with like puking passengers like Eric was talking about?
Yeah, I was puked on.
Oh man, no.
On the first leg of the day. Also on the leg. It's gonna get disgusting, so your discretion is advised.
Okay.
My partner, we were flying a 737, so 2 and 2. Usually we divided our duties, one in each galley, or after meal service, one in each galley goes to pick up the trash, and another flight attendant stays organizing the galley. That was my duty on that leg. And as I was putting away the drinks, I feel something warm hit my right leg. I look down and there's this. How graphic can you guys take it?
Go for it.
As graphic as you want.
Okay, there's this.
Don't admit to any crimes, but absent that, you're safe.
There's this pinkish liquid with pieces of ham and scrambled eggs running down my leg, and I see the same liquid kind of pulling around my shoe, and I turn around and see this lady who just opened the galley curtain, started vomiting on me, and halfway through puking was like, "I'm sorry, blah. The lavatory blah, was closed," blah, and she wouldn't stop puking. Every 2 words, she was barfing a waterfall. So I stood there in shock, and I started kind of getting queasy myself, like I'm about to vomit. And something in the back of my head said, "Dude, don't. You're just going to add fuel to the fire. One person puking is enough. She already gave you breakfast, dinner, maybe yesterday's lunch as well." So I just had to keep it in. Once she started kind of calming down, I hear the toilet flush, and I unlocked the toilet and was like, "Sir, leave the lavatory now." He was like, I haven't washed my hands. I need it. So I basically kicked a guy out of the toilet. He comes out looking like he wants to fight me, then sees a pool of vomit, immediately realizes what's going on, and just leaves, which is exactly what I wanted him to do. So kudos to that passenger. I tell the lady, "Into the lavatory now." And as soon as she comes in, I see my galley partner coming in with the trash card. And I
thought you were going to say parachute.
Oh, God. I wanted to jump off that plane. Trust me. And I goes like, "Dude, stop." He turns around and goes like, "What the fuck happened here?" And we had to improvise a smell, like an anti-smell concoction of just really concentrated coffee, getting layered between paper towels to kind of dry up the mess and stop it from spreading. But the galley was a complete mess. Like half the galley was unusable, a proper biohazard. When we got to the destination, the pilots ordered urgent cleaning of the aft galley. So they sent one guy with some paper towels, spray bottle, and gloves. I opened the plane door. He looks down and goes like, "I am so not prepared for this."
Yeah. And that poor next flight, right?
Oh,
the next flight, the people are like, "Oh, our plane's here. Fantastic."
Yeah, you could smell it. Like a third of the plane just reeked of vomit. The galley was terrible, like just unbearable. So I had to bathe in that smell for like, what was it? 3 hours, 2.5 hours of flight.
No, thank you.
One of the most remarkable stories that this immediately reminds one of is that story, I think it was last year, of some passenger flying out of the United States somewhere to Spain, I think it was, who had some like such violent diarrhea that the flight was above the Atlantic and they turned it around. They were like, we cannot continue mission. And I think to myself, like, on the one hand, it's like, and those, I mean, like, people had vacation plans ruined basically because this dude had violent diarrhea somehow all over the plane. I don't even understand. Like, he tried to get to the bathroom, but he was blowing up while he was going. And
dude exploded.
I mean, that's crazy. That is.
Yeah.
What would you do if you're in that plane and that happens? Of course, the smell is violent and unspeakable. But do you turn it around, or you're just like, I've got a vacation at the end of this in Spain. This is my vacation. I've got a week of vacation this year. You know, my company's not giving me the vacation back. Power through the diarrhea flight, but they turned it around. They turned that flight around.
It almost sounds like a life-threatening situation. He's going to dehydrate at some point.
I mean, it is a biohazard. Like,
it
is a biohazard. So you have to take that into consideration. Do you land like in Greenland? Are they equipped to deal with that? They had to recarpet the plane. That's how bad it was.
The story that Adrian's sharing, that one with, I think I did hear that. Yeah, like that plane was like done for.
Just straight.
They just retired it afterwards.
Yeah, just
set it on fire. Just like burn it. It's
nooks
done.
And crannies. You know they didn't get it all.
Oh no! I know how the planes get cleaned. They definitely didn't get it all.
Yeah. No.
Guys, seriously, I have right here, like, this isn't going to show up in the podcast, but like, see this little thing? It's like a packet of wet wipes. Guys, if you're flying, wet wipes. Never, ever, ever touch your tray table without wiping it first. The amount of mothers I have seen changing their babies on the tray table that just gets a quick wipe at the end of the flight, and then you're just bored. You don't realize how bad it is. Just wet wipes.
My son ate something off the floor of an airplane once that definitely was not food we dropped, and it was just one of those like moments like, oh no.
Did he survive?
Yeah.
Congratulations. He can never get sick again. He got the ultimate vaccine.
He is immortal.
Dude is gonna live to 108 years old. Impossible to get sick.
The forbidden snack.
What about that? What about that plane had to turn around? You ever have a medical emergency where you guys had to divert?
Not as a flight attendant. Actually, two situations. The one where we had to go back to the gate was as a passenger about 3 weeks ago, and the one where we were basically landing, so the closest safe airport where the person could get medical attention at was our destination, so we just carried on as normal. The one as a passenger, I was sitting in Europe. They don't use row 13. They consider it bad luck. I'm sitting on 14 Echo. Lady in 12 Echo, I see her head slump onto her husband's shoulder, and I go like, "Oh, that's good. She fell asleep." And I didn't see the husband just shaking her more violently, then start waving his hands around until the flight attendants show up. The lady had passed out and she was not reacting. We had to call medics. They checked her. They were like, "Okay, she's coming back, but she's not okay to fly. She should get a proper medical examination." So we had done pushback and like 2 meters of taxi. We had to wait for the tow truck to get back to us, for the medical team to arrive at the gate, for the lady to get convinced to get off the plane because she decided she wanted to fly anyway. And we had to wait for the luggage people to find the luggage. It was a really shitty situation. And the one where somebody passed out, where she needed oxygen in my flight, first flight as a flight attendant in training. I had never worked as a flight attendant before. I was under supervision, and this lady in like on the middle portion of the plane passed out. So we immediately started going around with oxygen tubes and everything. Luckily, there was a nurse on the plane who tended to her and kept her oxygenated. There was a trekker who had electrolytes, which we used to perk her up. But honestly, that was the welcoming party to my flight attendant world. Somebody passing out on my first flight.
Eric, have you ever heard the story of our friend John, where he had somebody, I think they died on the plane. Like he had to do CPR. You ever heard that story?
No, I haven't.
Well, that's the climax. But I don't think you ever heard the fallout from it. They're like, I don't even know if they took his name. They just landed and took the guy off, but he was like doing CPR until the people showed up at the gate. Wow. It was wild.
That's one of those things. As a physician, you always hear the stories about, is there a doctor on the plane? Most of us, like this late in our career, are just like, no, prefer not. Like unless something's really happening, I'm just gonna keep my head low here.
Then the dentist raises their hand. You're like, come on.
The nursing student, you're like, oh, okay.
Right. Anybody else?
No psychiatrist.
Yeah. Well, there's another story I know we're going to cover. But before we do that, you also, absent the job as a flight attendant, had some flight experience as well, and you kind of alluded to a gliding situation. What's the setup for that?
Let me stop you. How does one get into gliding? That's such a interesting hobby. Like, how do you even begin to start that?
You get it's like you get into regular aviation, then you remove the engine. No. What happened is my parents had my mom had a coworker whose dad was an airline pilot, and she was like, "Hey, my son is into aviation. He wants to become a pilot. Do you have any tips that you can ask your dad to give him?" And the guy calls me that night and goes like, "Charlie, listen to me. There's this glider school not far from where you live. Go there, learn to fly without an engine. it will teach you a lot of valuable stick and rudder skills that are going to translate to better control of the aircraft in the future. And he was absolutely right, which is something that I can confidently saved my life in an emergency. But back to the glider situation. 1 week before my glider exam, I was ready to give the exam, and I go back for a practice flight. And the weather is kind of iffy, right? And with my another partner, we had like student groups, 2 or 3 students. We were two in that group. We were 2 students that were going to give the glider exam the following week. So our instructor was like, "Okay, guys, do you feel ready to fly? The weather's kind of shitty." And I was like, "If I'm going to be a glider pilot next week, I should be able to handle it right now." So I was like, "Fine, I'll go first." It's kind of crosswind, and you could see in the distance some funny looking clouds coming in, but I thought nothing of it. I got onto the plane because at the airfield, the windsock was reading crosswinds, but not too heavy on the wind. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna give a little tour and see what's happening. I get onto the glider, we take off, everything as usual. Right around 500 meters. I don't know if the US uses the metric system for gliders. Here we use metric for gliders and feet for everything else. But about 500 meters in, which is roughly 1,500 feet, I cut myself loose, do a little turns, and start feeling like the wind just pushing me. It keeps pushing me and pushing me and pushing me away from the field. And I know this plane has speed limitations, so it's going to be terrible to get in. I immediately aim to the airport, and I see that I look at the ground, and the plane is flying backwards.
Wow.
So I'm aiming at the airfield, and it's getting farther away. I'm seeing lightning coming down I was at this time on the west side of the airfield, and lightning was on the east side coming in. And it's getting really shitty. So I just went in for a nosedive, trying to get as much speed as possible. And I was barely moving, just bleeding altitude, getting close to the airstrip. And at around, let's call it 300 feet off the ground, the winds kind of mellowed out enough so that I could get barely into a position where I could land. And I just barely managed to get onto a very tight final, maybe 120 feet off the ground. And I just landed the plane, opened the canopy. The instructor came and fetched me and was like, "How was it?" And I was like, "Nobody should fly today." That was the end of the day. I was like, okay, if this guy comes out of the plane so pale after flying and says nobody should get back on, maybe I'll take his word for it. And it was maybe a 10-12 minute flight. Felt like 40 minutes.
Wow.
Did that discourage you? Were you like, I'm never going to eat a glider again? Or are you like, I got to get back on the saddle?
Oh, no, that thing just motivates me. When that happens, I go like, okay, I see where I can improve. And, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
Unless it kills you. Right.
Fair enough.
Hey there, I'm Danny Brown, host of 5 Random Questions. If you love spontaneous conversations, unexpected laughs, and a bit of heartfelt wisdom, then this is the show for you. Each week, I sit down with my special guest and ask him 5 completely random questions, generated on the spot by my random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions will be, and neither do I, so you never know where the conversation will take us. Expect a mix of humour, unexpected wisdom, and a whole lot of fun as we dive into answers that can range from the utterly hilarious to the surprisingly profound. But that's not all. At the end of each episode, my guests get to turn the tables and ask me a random question to give me a taste of my own medicine. So if you're looking for a good laugh, some unexpected wisdom, or just an entertaining chat, join me every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favourite podcast app, or online at 5randomquestions.com. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm looking forward to welcoming you to 5 Random Questions, where every question is an adventure. See you there.
I won't lie. Next time I got onto the glider, I was scared shitless. and it was the exam. So I was scared of the previous flight, but I was like, I can do this. I survived that flight. This isn't gonna be worse. Plus, the weather was perfect on the exam day. So I kind of went in like the lizard brain was blaring alarms like, dude, you had a really bad time last time. Are you sure this is gonna be okay? And my actual human brain was like, yeah, dude, you know your shit. You survived. You know how to fly this thing. Give it a shot. You have to face your fears. And luckily, I ended up passing the exam. I gave a very solid flight exam. The instructor congratulated me. He did mention I landed very long on the runway. And he said, dude, why did you land so long on the runway? I was like, dude, this is like 3/4 of a mile worth of grass runway. This thing needs 100 yards to stop. And there was a glider waiting to get up. I can either try to land in the 120 yards behind the other glider, or I can just fly over it, land long, make sure I have enough available runway. Also, and he goes like, okay, that's a good decision. If you hadn't told me that, I would have failed you. But given your reasoning, I think it's a pass. So I got off the plane, and then the nerves hit. Usually that's what happens. You get a little nervous, you get a little pressure. But in my case, I perform. Once the pressure is done, it like kind of pops there. So I get off the plane, and then I start shaking a bit.
So yeah, there's something in aviation. It's all about situational awareness. Like you notice, where am I going? What's on the ground? I got to plan for, how much space I need. And whenever you hear of aircraft accidents, it is, if it's not mechanical, and usually with older aircraft, it's not, they've worked out all the bugs. It's a situational awareness thing. A pilot, a crew member or something like that just missed something. They just weren't paying attention. So that's what makes the difference is picking up on that stuff. With regard to that, so how old were you when you did the glider test?
16. I was scratching 17 years old. Just
that's crazy. We're learning to drive at this age, and you're learning to fly gliders. That's wild.
Yeah, I don't know how to drive. I fly planes, cannot drive a car. Went from the bike straight to the plane.
Oh, you're serious?
Dead serious.
That's funny.
So, all right. So after you have that experience with aviation, you got to get, you're already a licensed glider pilot, at least. You end up joining the military after that. Did you do anything in aviation in the military?
I was in the Air Force, but as far as the aviation
flying, were you in the air?
Once in a Hercules during a thunderstorm on a 5.5-hour flight, dodging lightning.
Okay.
3 missed approaches at our destination, and we had to come back. The good thing about the Hercules, I don't know if you guys have ever flown in one, but even if you get in a thunderstorm, it doesn't get any more turbulent. The thing is already shaking to pieces as it goes. So it doesn't get much worse than cruise.
I've jumped out of Hercules before, and I've not jumped out of Hercules while we were flying around a landing zone in LZ while a thunderstorm was raging, and I can confirm that is true. It is a loud and rattling but effective airframe.
Yeah, it works. It just works. It's not comfortable, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, for all my years in the military, I never once was in a fixed-wing aircraft. Not one time did I ever fly. Even when we went overseas, it was a chartered commercial flight. We didn't. I never rode on a military aircraft that didn't have rotor blades on it. But anyway, I digress. So you go in the military. You're in the military for a few years, and then
actually, I was not that long in the military. I did boot camp and then served for about 6-7 months. Then left for flight attendant.
Do you think that experience in the military assisted you? I mean, in any way, but specifically in the flight attendant career?
Yeah, it gave me a lot of discipline. The whole aspect of being always tidy and neat, which gets drilled into you, really served a purpose. In flight attendant, like working as a flight attendant, you get weird hours. Sometimes you're lazy. Like you can get lazy when you get called at like 2 a.m. in the morning for a flight when you're on reserve. And having that discipline of always keeping the uniform tidy, always keeping the shoes polished, always being. Right now, I'm kind of like. Right now, I have long hair for my standards. but like always being at least halfway ready, I do think it served me a lot. To this day, it still impacts me positively.
All right. So obviously the flight attendant job is stressful. Now, in the other aspects of your aviation career as a pilot, what's the craziest thing you've experienced?
Well, you know how I mentioned I know how to fly gliders. To put it kind of softly, took off in a single engine plane, landed a glider in a field. I was flying, what was it, 1,000 feet off the ground with a coworker, just cruising after a normal flight, and suddenly the engine kind of was like, brr, brr, and in a span of 3 seconds, I just see the prop go from spinning normally, all the pressure gauges are okay, everything seems to be fine. Suddenly, the prop is completely still. The sudden shift from the constant hum of the engine going into complete silence, that's kind of scary because one gets used to that background sound, and suddenly when the engine quits on you and you're 1,000 feet off the ground, the silence is deafening.
For those that don't know, 1,000 feet's not that high to make decisions on what to do. You are pretty close to the ground for an aircraft.
Yeah, it was scary. I remember at that time, I two things about my training kicked in. Number one, I had a great flight instructor when I did my private pilot course, who he kept pulling the craziest, most random simulated engine failures on me. So I got good training on low altitude engine failures. And another flight instructor was like, whenever something unusual happens on a plane, nose down. That will save your life. So immediately, nose down, pitch to best glide speed, which is basically the speed that allows you for more time in the air, which I didn't have a lot of. Maybe I had 30, 40 seconds, and I had to troubleshoot. I tried turning the plane back on, doesn't work. Switch fuel tanks, try turning it back on, doesn't work. Try switching again, nothing. At this point, I'm like 800, 750 feet and losing altitude. I look to my left. I see a federal prison and a nice field in front of it. And I go like, that's a good place because at least if I kill myself there, they're going to find me quickly. Then I see like electricity wires, like high voltage wires. And I go like, I'm definitely killing myself if I go to my left. Let's see the road ahead. Okay, it's a narrow country road. It's probably beaten to hell and back. And I don't know if it has electric poles and electric wiring overhead. So I don't know if that's a good idea. The plane definitely is wider than the road. If it has a pole, I'm getting a wing strike before I land. I'm dead. I look to my right and I see this unkempt field, like completely void of any human structure on it. So I'll go like, it's not cultivated. So I'm not going to run into corn or sunflower, which is something that I got trained in gliding to avoid. Always aim for soy fields, by the way. They are the softest for landing. And since it's completely unkempt, no animals, so I'm not going to strike a cow or a horse or whatever. And I go like, yeah, that's the choice. I don't have any other options. I look at my friend and I go like, dude, we're going to go to the ground. He kind of giggles a bit because he thinks I'm pulling a prank. And then I go into the radio. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Let's call the plane Alpha Bravo Charlie 123, engine out. We're landing on a field south of X airport. My friend looks at me. He knows what mayday means. He's also in aviation, so he goes like, okay, this guy briefed me. I'm not going to touch any controls. And he just kind of crosses his arms, checks his seatbelt, and goes like, we're in it. I trust you. And I just aim to the field, start configuring the plane for landing, checking the speeds. And once I have the plane set up, it's just waiting. It's a long wait. It's a short time, but it feels like a long wait, you know? You hear the wind pass over the wings, which is something you usually don't hear when you have the engine blaring, the noise-canceling headphones on. I also wear little earplugs under the headphones to protect my hearing. So usually you don't hear wind at all. And suddenly I'm hearing the shh of the wind kind of going around over another wings. And as I get close to the ground, I keep thinking, what's going to happen? My mom is at home. My dad is coming to fetch me at the airstrip for dinner. Will I have a signal once I crash to call the police? Will I have a body to call emergency services? The guy to my right has a 7-year-old son. He's a single father. What's going to happen to him? And I remember feeling my hand shake a little bit. And I go like, no, dude, leave the shaking for the ground. Right now you have to fly the plane. So I just aim for the field. And as I get closer and closer and closer, I start the flare, which is when you lift the nose up to soften the landing. And I start hearing tack, 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 high grass hitting the wheels and the cowling of the plane. And I realize, fuck, this is not a good field to land on. And it was a tricycle landing gear plane that's 2 wheels in the middle, 1 on the nose. The 2 wheels in the middle are the main landing track, you can call it. That hits first. It gets buried immediately because the area was swampy. It had rained a lot 2 or 3 days before. It had rained pretty badly. So the landing gear immediately sinks. The nose gear hits hard, collapses. The nose goes into the dirt. The tail goes up, and I go like, are we flipping? And this is the impact kind of, it got really slow, like slow motion. And I see my friend kind of get jolted forward from the impact and the seatbelt keeping him together. And I feel the same happening to me. His headphones fly, strike the windshield, shatter the windshield. The checklist that we use flies off. And the plane is suddenly doing an 70, 80 degree headstand, kind of edging towards a flip, and comes back down. Now there isn't a noise, not even the wind. And I do a little checkup on myself, look at my friend, see his hole, and I go like, before the adrenaline wears off, I gotta get out of this plane in case an electrical failure or something mixed with the fuel starts shit. So I open the door and tell my friend, open the door, get out, run. We both open the door at the same time, and as we're getting out, I turn on the ELT, which is like a beacon that lets emergency services know where you crashed. And we kind of run like maybe 30 yards away from the plane, stop for a moment, and I give him a quick check. Like, are your legs okay? Arms, body? Did you hit your head? He checks me too. We're all completely fine. Not a scratch in either of us. And suddenly I can just breathe again. But it felt like for the last, here time gets fuzzy. It felt like half an hour to me. It was probably like a minute at most. It felt like I wasn't breathing. So right there, just the adrenaline kind of drops. The legs start shaking. And I'm like, fucking hell. We got off easy. And I immediately call emergency services and then end up getting directed to the search and rescue for the largest international airport in the zone. They send a plane out to find me. And we just had to wait. And the wait was really unbearable because as hard as this thing was, maybe the worst part of it all was the mosquitoes. I forgot the mosquito repellent and they were sucking me dry. So I was kind of, at the time, more worried about getting dengue or chikungunya, which are like 2 common diseases in my country. And we just had to wait while swatting mosquitoes for like 2 hours. And then the sun begins to set. And I'm like, dude, we're in the middle of a field. The closest piece of civilization is maybe 5 kilometers away. Based on the last time I saw the plane's GPS, we can just walk north, see if we can find shelter. And suddenly we start hearing sirens blaring. And as it gets darker, we start seeing them, like the lights. And right before nightfall, we got found by an ambulance and the police car. And as they were approaching us, the field was so swampy that the ambulance and the police truck got stuck in the mud. So we had to self-evacuate into the ambulance. But by this point, we were like physically perfectly fine. I a little shook up from the situation, but not like terrible, just a bit scared. But we got checked up by the paramedics. We were just perfectly in shape. So we ended up helping push the police truck off the mud to help us get out. And
what does that look like in the aftermath? Like, is there a investigation, or do you get like a ticket for crashing a plane? Like, what does that look like?
Honestly, the investigation lasts about a year. From what the investigators told me, they interviewed me to see what happened. The owner of the plane, which was a flight school that, sometimes cheap things get really expensive. I went to the cheapest flight school I could find, and maybe that wasn't the smartest idea. Maybe I wouldn't be telling this story here right now if I had chosen a bit better where to fly. But, well, they also get investigated. The plane gets sent to a workshop. The plane gets checked out by mechanics first, then they get repaired, because the plane had a collapsed landing gear and a broken windshield, broken broken prop. But as far as the structure goes, it was like it can fly again. So right now I'm just in the middle, like in a limbo where I don't know where the investigation is gonna go. I don't know how it's gonna turn out. I had to do a medical evaluation, and once I do it, I can just get back on a plane, which I'm dying to do, actually.
Man, so at this point, do you know what the cause was? Are you able to share it with us?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I mean, it could have been icing, but the weather was nice. Honestly, I have no clue. Maybe just some debris on the fuel tank that clogged the engine, because it kind of choked out on me.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's terrifying. So you guys ask a question. I don't even know where to go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's sort of the argument against flying, right? Is that like, if you're not flying, that's never going to happen to you. That is the if I was to say the argument against flying a plane, it is you're in the plane which is under power and the engine is working, and then the engine, for mysterious reasons that you can't get out and fix because you're in a plane, stops working, and now you're in a glider. It's an effective glider or an ineffective glider. I guess one question is like, what makes it worth it to keep going up there, to keep flying? What makes it worth it, knowing that thing, like a car, the engine stops and now you glide to a stop? I mean, I actually worry about if I'm going fast, like I've got an electric car now with my manual car with the Subaru Forester. You know the Subaru, Ryan, this big, blue station wagon we have. It's manual, so I can put it in first gear and slow it down. I've got the emergency brake and I can slow it down. With the electric car, I'm sort of like, if this thing breaks, there isn't a lot that I can do except just like finding ways to slow it down. But with a plane, of course, you're in the air.
Well, yeah, but as you said, like you ask, what makes you want to go back into flying again? Firstly, it's fun. Maybe not like that landing wasn't fun, but the rest of the flight was. I was having fun until it got scary. That sounded so bad. But it's fun. I also kind of proved to myself that in a high pressure situation, I can act. So like it terrified me, but like I also have this confidence that, hey, if it ever happens again, which statistically it's not likely to happen. I mean, there's also a funny anecdote of a flight attendant in Argentina from a flight crash that killed 63 people, and next week she was flying and she got interviewed and was like, statistically I already been in one, it's not going to happen to me twice. I can relate to that, but also it's what I love doing. It's the career path I chose, and it's a risk that I know I run. And when you get into a car, it can also happen. And I actually think driving is a little bit more dangerous, because in aviation you have a basic bar that you have to pass where like not every idiot can get on a plane, but I've seen some people driving cars that shouldn't be operating a 2,000 kilo machine going at like 80 miles an hour down the highway. So I know I'm not surrounded by complete idiots. I work with pilots. I know they're kind of specialized morons, but they're not complete morons.
Statistically, flying is much safer than driving. Like much, much, much safer.
Yeah. So also, I know how to fly. Apparently, I also know how to crash land fairly well. I got away with it. So between the extra confidence, the knowing how planes work, because I've been researching a lot after the crash, what could have gone wrong, what happened, what could happen. I feel like I also made the right decisions. I feel prepared to I feel prepared for two things. I feel prepared to prevent this from happening again. And if it does happen, I feel prepared to deal with it again. Which I know not many pilots can say that. I know pilots who have been through very traumatic points in their career that have quit aviation after pouring years worth of wages and time into it.
Yeah, I've had the same experience too. Where I've heard of and run into pilots where it's like they have that one experience where it was a bridge too far to just rattle their, I would say, confidence. You talked about confidence. You know, you're more confident now because of the result of it, and that allows you to move forward mentally, finding yourself in the air again. And like I said, I've heard of and run into pilots that they would do a military career, stressful stuff, be in combat, and then they would, in the civilian side, do some medical life flight stuff, which is actually can be more dangerous sometimes because of the situations you get yourself in, and they didn't feel comfortable, and they had to pick a different career path and pivot because that was just too much for them, too high a stress or whatever. So it's really interesting that the confidence is playing such a big factor, and you be able to push forward.
Not the same, but just I am not a pilot. I don't want to fly. I don't like flying, period. I find it very, very stressful. And honestly, every time I fly, I hate it more and more. And yeah, I've flown hundreds of times. I've gone skydiving, all these things, but I think it's the lack of control and knowing that even though the chances are low that something will happen, if they do happen, it's catastrophically awful. And it's led to me having literally a recurrent nightmare when I sleep on planes. And you can ask my wife about this. It happens every time I sleep on a plane. I'll be asleep for a few minutes and then suddenly just sit bolt upright and like, and I'm literally dreaming that the plane is going down, and that's how I'm waking up. And this has happened dozens of times, and my wife finds it humorous and laughs at me every time. She's like, "Oh, that's so funny." I'm like, "It's not funny. It's absolutely terrifying. Every single time it happens, I think I'm dying."
Yeah, it is terrifying. I've seen as a flight attendant, I see people who are afraid of flying a lot, and I always take a special precaution to be with them to kind of keep them company, because what you say, it happens to a lot of people. It's a reoccurring thing. And like, I think what you said about the control, that's hitting the nail in the head, because like I've been in crazy situations in planes where I have the control of the thing, but if I go, this is going to sound crazy, but I went to New York, visited the Empire State. Looking down was terrifying. I have flown twice as high as the Empire State with me as a pilot. I fly machines that are 40, 41,000 feet off the ground. And it doesn't strike me as much as just looking down from a balcony, because at least I have some control of the situation. Roller coasters terrify me because it's both the adrenaline of the fall and everything, and not having a say on what happens, which I think kind of differentiates me between I can go back in the plane after a plane crash, but you put me on a roller coaster and I might survive one, not getting on another one for at least a month.
Well, Charlie, thank you for sharing those incredible stories. I think we can all agree we should all never fly again, and I appreciate you for really pushing that narrative that no one should ever get on a plane again. No, I'm just kidding.
No, planes are death machines. Just don't drive everywhere. No.
Right. But thank you so much for coming on, sharing those stories. And I hope people now have an appreciation what aircraft personnel have to put up with and deal with. It's stressful and difficult enough. And hopefully people hear this episode and they're a little bit more patient next time. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Thank you guys for having me. And it's been a pleasure to me too.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Ryan Connor couldn't be here this week. If he were here, he would say, check out his tour dates. He's coming. He's doing Canada over the next few months. I know he's coming out to the East Coast. And check out his podcast, Connor v. Cobb. And if there's nothing else, see you guys next time. Thanks again. Music for Baggage provided by Quincy Ledbetter. You can find his stuff at qledbetter.com. Graphics provided by Megan Weaver. You can find her at meganweaverart.com. Special thanks to our premium members for their support. You can become a premium member by clicking subscribe in your Apple Podcast app or by visiting thebaggagepodcast.com/support to sign up or to gift a membership to someone. A percentage of all proceeds go to charity. If you have any questions, comments, or a good story to share, please email us at thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com.
The Baggage Podcast, which of these four people has encountered a cryptid and which cryptid did they encounter?
Now, Ryan Frank, one of the two Ryans, he's already a fan of our show, Mondo Frico Podcast, so we have to be nice to him. And he's an attorney, so he works in buildings, right?
Right, yeah.
I'm not thinking cryptid. I'm thinking he's seeing some sort of a haunting. And if we do the typical haunting, it's the woman in white that travels to the courthouse, maybe seen occasionally by the night watch person. But I think Frank might have caught a glimpse of her once in a while.
She's like an old file clerk that had been there. Started when the courthouse, before it was built.
Mm-hmm. Did she die in a filing accident?
Filing cabinet fell on her, yeah.
She started loading the top drawer first, and then she pulled it open too far.
Yeah, poor Marge. Where's Marge? And where's my files?
Mondo Frico Podcast.